Okay, so I will start then. Hello, everyone. It's nice to participate this way. Um, so I want to talk about the Internet of Things versus what I call the things of the Internet. So maybe you've heard of the Internet of Things. Sometimes it's abbreviated IoT. And the things of the internet, I thought, why not just call it TOTI? So we have this kind of dialectic between the IoT and the TOTI. So I wanted to start by just offering some opinions about the Internet of Things. So I think there are some problems with the Internet of Things. First of all, I think that the Internet of Things is it's positioned as a very new idea a lot of the time, but I think if you go back to the history of sort of futurism, especially in the mid-century, last century, then you have this sort of this smart home idea that's been around for a long time. Since the 1930s or earlier, you've had various different people predicting that in the future things will be automated and be connected. And I think this is a particularly good example here. In the 1950s, like this inventor designed his home to have all these special buttons and things that you could push. And then, of course, like there was the House of the Future sponsored by Monsanto, which is at Disneyland, and let's see if this will play. I don't know if this will work. There is sound. Do you not hear the sound? Oh, that's okay. Well, basically, I just will tell you, they're just showing off all these special appliances and different things that kind of are supposed to be really futuristic and automated and make everything better, And this trend just goes on and on and on. So this is nothing really new that we want to make our stuff more smart, And actually, this little historical article is on this website, Wearable, which is called, Tech for Your Connected Self. So even the people that are into the Internet of Things recognize that it has this legacy. But I think a lot of the time it's still hyped as like the next big thing. And how can it be the next big thing when it's been around for, this long? It's just an evolution. So, okay, back to the critique. One of the biggest problems that I see with the Internet of Things is that it could create a state of permanent distraction. So the idea that, the Internet of Things is putting chips, microchips, in all sorts of regular everyday objects and sensors in those objects so that they're smart and that they can communicate with each other. I think that that's a fallacy. I think that what's most likely to happen is that there will be minimal amounts of technology incorporated into everyday objects, and that a lot of what we're going to encounter as the Internet of Things will actually be taking the form of increased dependency on your smartphone. And that basically you'll be able to manipulate and control your environment, but it'll be through an app on your smartphone. And so now you won't just be getting alerts from Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, but you'll also be getting alerts from your washing machine and your car and your dog and your home security system and your stationery and practically anything else you could think of. And that's going to create what I think could be a pretty permanent level of distraction. Another critical point about the Internet of Things is that I believe we could see what I'm calling firmware bricking, or maybe more poetically, a sea of bricks. And a brick is, I don't know if you know this term brick, it's like a slang for a digital device that is no longer working, So, like if you have an iPhone and the iPhone's battery is dead and is beyond repair, then your iPhone is a brick. It's basically a glorified paperweight. And a lot of the things that are going to join the Internet of Things have the potential to become bricks because there's firmware, there's proprietary software that's sort of making these things behave as these magical digitally integrated devices. And what happens if the company that makes that firmware goes out of business? It means that all those devices suddenly don't get updated anymore, and over a very short period of time, probably less than a year, become more and more obsolete and eventually worthless for their original use. Or at least they won't have the enhancement anymore that they had before. That ties into, again, like a society that's already very much about planned obsolescence. I think that the Internet of Things has the potential to create even more obsolescence in physical objects than before, and obsolescence in things which we're not used to experiencing obsolescence in short cycles, like clothing. There's fashion, of course, but if you have a pair of jeans that's kind of just serving the everyday utilitarian purpose of being worn as functional clothing, and that pair of jeans suddenly is augmented with the Internet of Things, and maybe, is a self-heating pair of jeans, or is a self-washing pair of jeans, or is a pair of jeans that you can track the location of, if you sleep around a lot and you're not sure whose bedroom the jeans are sitting in. All those use cases will eventually brick your jeans pretty quickly, and then I guess they'll just be regular jeans again. But if you become really dependent on that feature that lets you track your jeans' location, you may just decide, okay, those jeans are dead or they're buggy, I'm going to get new jeans, and just create an even faster cycle of obsolescence. So maybe the jeans is an absurd example, but I think that it's not too absurd considering some of the stuff I'd like to show you. And then the last problem I thought I would mention is what I would call just everyday glitches. And that is that we're used to experiencing a glitch when we use our computer, like I was 5 minutes ago when this Skype call and the full screen keynote presentation were kind of glitching. But we're not used to experiencing glitches in all of these totally mundane situations, like doing our laundry or walking our dog or taking money out of a money machine. And so what happens when we experience glitches in these very mundane situations? It makes regular everyday life a lot more unpredictable and frustrating. So I'm going to talk about an example of that too. Okay, so now I want to get very concrete because I think it's easy to get too abstract with this sort of discussion. So here's a couple examples of the Internet of Things that I'm going to pick on today. And I don't necessarily think that these things are bad or that they're terrible or that the people that make them are bad. I just think that they point to a future where we might see some of these problems that I identified. So the first one, these are actually out of order, so it should be, this should be the order. Okay. So the first one I want to talk about is actually a local Berlin startup, and it's a company called Avakai, and they make a toy which is like a wooden children's toy. And it is part of the Internet of Things. It has sensors in it, it has Bluetooth, and it has a LED in it, and I think it also can make sound, I'm not sure. And it has a software platform. So let's just take a look at their website. So you see, less screen time, more play. Crafted wooden toy twins that enable kids to discover free play in a connected world without screens. Well, it sounds pretty good, but what about the fact that the parents of these kids have to spend a lot more time in front of screens in order to make these toys interesting? We don't really get that side of the story. So I don't know. I mean, this sounds good on the surface. It sounds, really analog, a real piece of craftsmanship made of wood, equipped with Bluetooth and sensor technology. The Avakai twins are specially designed to stimulate all the senses and activate your kids' imagination without screens. But again, that's great for the kids, but what about the parents? And what about when this startup goes out of business and the legacy code is no longer serviced, and these just become regular wooden toys, which, to be honest, are pretty unremarkable wooden toys. So I just don't know about the future viability of this sort of toy. I don't know if this is really going to last through the ages, or if an Avakai toy is going to be something that is entertaining for maybe 1 year, and then a decade from now will be like a relic of a bygone era where we thought that everything should have a chip in it. So I'm skeptical. I think this is a beautifully designed object, and I think that this is an object which is there's going to be things about what I present about things of the internet that might confuse you when I talk about this, but I think you'll start to see that stuff like this has a certain kind of it has an appeal on the surface, but if you dig a little deeper, it may eventually become completely frivolous and useless in a very short amount of time. So another example. So this one is sort of the permanent distraction problem, right? It's like you may get your kids off the screens, but you as parents are going to be on screens even more. And that's the thing I'm not so sure about. Okay, let's talk about bricking. So this is Little Printer, and Little Printer is a heat receipt printer that runs on a network that'll print various different things for you. At least that's what it did. The problem is Little Printer was created by a design studio in London called Berg, and it was like very popular. It was everywhere. Little Printer was the toast of all the Internet of Things blogs, and even the ones that liked it would write little headlines like "Little Printer wastes paper in an awfully cute way." But what's happened to Little Printer is that Berg, the design company, unfortunately has folded. And if we go to the Little Printer blog, we see that basically this guy, Matt, was recently the CEO at Berg, and now he's the last employee and trying to wrap things up. And basically he's trying to leave all the Little Printer owners out there with a website that keeps the thing running. So that's the state of affairs with Little Printer now, is that basically everybody that's got one of these little things is facing a potential brick situation where basically if Matt, the former CEO of Berg, doesn't have any more time to put into this little side project, Little Printer, then everybody who ever bought a Little Printer is going to end up with a brick that doesn't print anymore. And if those people don't want to interface with this new backend that he's created because they were used to the more convenient platform that they had before, then they're guaranteed to get a brick because of lack of technical expertise. So it's a sad thing, but as cute and cheeky as Little Printer was, as an Internet of Things experiment, it's a pretty quick cycle of it becoming useless. I mean, within 5 years or less. So that's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about the sea of bricks. There's going to be more and more little bricked hardware devices that litter people's houses if the Internet of Things continues in the direction it's going. And then I thought the last thing to address was the everyday glitches. So, this is a more mainstream service, Car2Go, which in many ways is actually very useful. And car sharing services that are mediated through the use of mobile apps are actually a pretty great innovation. So I'm not entirely skeptical about this technology, but I have encountered personally with friends in Berlin even, I think even with Dimitri, the experience of having kind of glitchy situations occur because of screen saving. Oh, I have another appointment coming up soon. Okay. So the glitch thing is like an ever-present thing on the computer, but when it enters into real life, I think it's, it creates funny situations. Like you'll walk to a Car2Go location to pick up a car, and then the car is just not there. Or you get to the car, and somebody else gets to the car at the same time, and neither one of you can book the car because of an error, because you both tried to book it at the same time, or something like that. So these systems are not perfect. They're very fallible, and I think you'll see more and more everyday glitches. Okay, so now I want to talk about the counter, which is, what are the things of the internet? if we've just been talking about the Internet of Things, what are the things of the Internet? So I think that the things of the Internet have a different quality. Which I don't know that these are hard, fast criteria, because I've been thinking about this topic for the